Well, the summer school is part of our research project on translanguaging and translation, and the idea behind the summer school is to bring people from across the world who are interested in the topic of researching translanguaging. 46 students from around the world, 21 countries in fact, to come together to exchange information, to exchange ideas on their research context, but also to explore what translanguaging means theoretically, methodologically, and in terms of practice as well.
The key defining feature of being bilingual is to be able to switch between languages, to make appropriate choice.
As an analytical perspective, translanguaging refers to approaching the research topics from a flexible, dynamic perspective rather than looking at boundaries. It's really aiming to break boundaries, and including disciplinary boundaries in our research.
Originally, I'm a modern linguist, and what excites me about translanguaging is it's a way for areas like mine, which are often focused on a single nation and are often focused on a single language, to reflect on the ways in which our practices and assumptions might change. Translanguaging has that potential of forcing those of us in a whole range of different disciplines, not just to reflect on the importance of language, but also to reflect on the importance of different languages, different repertoires of languages in daily contact, and what that means for how we teach, how we research.
It's been wonderful to see so many people from different parts of the world, especially those from the Southern Hemisphere, participating in this wonderful summer school. It is aimed at capacity building the next generation of researchers looking at dynamic multilingualism from new original perspectives. And it is really rewarding to see so many people interested in taking part in the summer school.
I think for us, we brought here a team of 10 young scholars who really we want to build more capacity for implementing translanguaging in South Africa. So definitely we want to expand this in South Africa. We want to make more people to begin to work in the field, but we've started to establish the community of practice here.
Translanguaging to us is an interesting concept because in South African context is highly multilingual, and they imagine that when you have 11 languages, it's common to have in one community to have people who speak more than 2 or 3 languages. And the translanguaging ecology, it opens that space to say, can translanguaging be a tool of which that can be used to open up spaces for meaningful learning and to overcome language barriers in multilingual contexts?
Actually, in South Korean context where I am from, translanguaging is sort of a new concept, and it's not really accepted because there's really strong monolingual ideology of English. So I would like to learn how I can apply translanguaging into the teaching, and also how I can mitigate the monolingual ideology of English in my context.
The reason I've come to this summer school is that our team has really 2 key concept themes that run through all 4 strands, and one of those is translanguaging, and it has great relevance to my work. In this Kenyan refugee camp, people come from many different countries. They have many different sign languages at their disposal, so it's a melting pot of languages. So we want to use the translanguaging frame to examine their communication, how they interact with themselves, each other, with hearing people, do they write things down, use gestures. So the theory and the framework is very, very instructive in terms of examining the people that are going to be part of my study.
So for me, translanguaging is something that I'm exploring because it offers an opportunity to challenge what's called monolingual ideology in the Rwandan classroom. So where the government says that only English should be used in the Rwandan classroom, what we find on the ground is that Rwandan teachers are translanguaging between Kinyarwanda, which is the national language, and English, and also French. So I'm looking into the potential for translanguaging to kind of create a space for resistance against the hegemony of English.
I use it as a way to see how the boundaries between monolinguals and multilinguals are blurred, and how also so-called monolinguals in a Swedish school context, how they also translanguage. So I see it as a theoretical perspective to not have binary constructions of different language speakers.
I've used translanguaging in my PhD, so it's very much part of when I was looking at deaf people in Cambodia and how they communicated with other people using the official language, whether they gestured. So I've applied many of the translanguaging theories already in my work. The new strand of work that I'll be doing in my postdoc, it is very applicable as well. There is a new way of looking at language and communication that is not, it doesn't limit people. It really does show and represent people's creativity, their repertoires, all the different ways that they find to communicate with each other as human beings.
Translanguaging, I am more involved with it on the pedagogical dimension, but I realized from the summer school that actually it spans across a lot of fields, and translanguaging in sports, translanguaging in business, translanguaging in all other areas, which makes it quite fascinating and interesting, actually. So yes, I think I'm been enlightened, and I'm actually excited about what's going on right now with the summer school.
Yesterday we've already had discussions about, in modern languages teaching, often taking for granted categories such as language, such as mother tongue, such as native speaker teachers. I think a lot of the work that translanguaging has been doing, I think, can very much inform the development of where modern languages is going, and I think we saw those connections very strongly.
How do we engage with communities? How do we work in collaboration with people outside of academia? And how do we give back to the community that we're researching and working alongside? So those are the kind of the main things that I've really got out of the TLANG event, and it's been really great to hear about all of the cutting edge research that people are doing, not just in the UK but further afield, particularly in places like South Africa. And it's been really brilliant to meet such a diverse range of scholars. Folk at all different sort of career stages as well, right from PhDs all the way through to really established researchers. So that's been, you know, one of the big highlights, I think, of the conference.
I think what struck me has been the diversity of contexts that people are working in, and the similarities and differences which have been so enriching. Just the practical negotiation strategies that have been used have been good examples in terms of taking that back to my research site. And also I think the humility of people here in how they've presented their research, and the generosity with which people have led us into their projects and shared that has been quite a lesson for me, and I think I'll take that back.
I've been interested in a number of methodological aspects. I mean, for example, the session on the multimodality this morning and drawing and, you know, non-linguistic forms of making sense of and recording experience has been very, very interesting for me. But also the theorizing of translanguaging itself, because that's something that I and my students are working on grappling with, you know, whether translanguaging is theory, whether we can even talk about translanguaging as pedagogy, and so on. So I think that's really stimulating.
I mean, the particular workshop yesterday was on theater, which I found very interesting, because we needed to take a part of our research result or process and put it into theater performance. That gives you an opportunity to really transform or translanguage something that's happening on a very cognitive level usually, and to put it into a different modality or different modalities, using the body, the space, other people.
I think it's really important work as we've become a more diverse or super diverse, as we talked about today, society. I think it's important to think about the ways in which people are actually communicating, especially for policy making, and just creating more awareness around how language is actually used, and how language itself is a social construct, to understand a little bit more about the ways in which we are interacting with one another.
Well, there's so much to talk about. There's so much going on. I think the sessions have been very great, very diverse, and very productive as well. Not just for the content of the presentations, but also the participants. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of subsidies to be taken from the courses to my daily practices. Yeah.
I was actually thinking about cascading quite a lot of this information. Obviously not 5 days, because my fellow teachers would probably kill me, but maybe running a session on translanguaging for the other teachers to kind of have a discussion about how it could be used in the classroom and kind of come to a kind of collaborative approach, or maybe just collating ideas and sharing ideas on how we could use it in the classroom.
Obviously we use visual methodologies as deaf people, but I think this summer school has given me a lot more of an objective view of many of the methodologies that I've used and some of the others that are available, and offered me different perspectives. So really that's the thing that's really going to help me with my future research.
It's just been a wonderfully designed summer school, I think, from the social events to the variety of sessions. I wouldn't like to pull one out because people have done such different things, and also the methodology of presenting different parts of the workshops have been varied, and I've loved that. So we've done activities, there's been lecturing, people have shown a variety of data from video to audio to text. So I think for me the balance has been great, and we've worked really hard, but we've had a lot of fun too. So.
Just that it's been an absolutely fantastic event, just really well organised. Speakers are really engaging, lots of space for us to talk about the ideas in small groups and pairs. And again, you don't get that very often at conferences. You don't really get many opportunities to sit down and actually talk about the research that you're being presented with, and particularly think about how it relates to your own work. And so that's been, one of the really positive highlights of TLANG, and certainly something that I wish more places would adopt.
I think as long as one is interested as a researcher in communication processes in multilingual environments, translanguaging is relevant, because it's about capturing the changing communicative landscape of mobility, of change, of superdiversity. It's very much about looking at the agency of what people do with what they have to hand to make meaning.